So as one lives in a culture, one finds that there are some subtle and not so subtle differences in culture. And of course, being from the United States, living here, there is a distinction in culture that I found that is a very positive one, especially around today. In the U.S., there is Memorial Day, and for many people, it's a time to just have some barbecue or something, I don't know. But in this country, there's something else going on here. Remembrance Day. Somebody came up to me last Sunday and put this on my sport coat. And there was almost a sacredness about it. A cohesiveness about it, of this country that is, as someone said not too long ago, a peacekeeping nation. I love that. Seems to be somehow eclipsed in the country of my birth. Many reasons perhaps for that, but in this country there seems to be a real felt knowing of remembrance and taking pause to acknowledge those that take a stand for peace. Peace is an attribute of spirit. In the unity teachings, peace, God does not have peace. God does not have love, nor life, nor wisdom, nor power, but God is peace. God is life. God is love, wisdom, and power. And that we have this within us, these attributes. And all this past week I've been reflecting upon this observance, this holiday within Canada, and I deeply resonate with it. I was doing just a little bit of research on Remembrance Day. It said the red remembrance poppy has become a familiar emblem of Remembrance Day to the poem In Flanders Fields. Now, this information is probably well known to all of you, but it's good to remember. It's new to me in a way. Written by a Canadian physician, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, who died in 1918 in the field of serving his countrymen and others of pneumonia. Later, after reading the poem, Moina Michael, a professor at the University of Georgia, wrote the poem, We Shall Keep the Faith, and swore to wear a red poppy on 11/11, which has stood the test of time. It's interesting about 11/11 as a date in a more current way. 11/11 is a spiritual awakening piece that has come alive within me and so many thousands of others. If you look online, there's hundreds of links to 11/11, which is a master number of awakening, of remembering, of reflecting upon the divine within us. Anyway, poppies, red poppies, were worn for the first time in 1921 in an anniversary ceremony. These poppies bloomed across some of the worst battlefields of Flanders in World War I, which, by the way, World War I ended today, 100 years ago. Today. Very interesting to me. Their red color became a symbol for the blood spilled in the war. And I found it interesting. Poppies bloomed across some of the worst battlefields. Could that be coincidence, or could that be a sign of the enduring life principle? That regardless of conflict, regardless of difference, seeming death, that life moves on, moves forward regardless. A symbol of the life principle, which was an idea within Charles Fillmore's mind. Charles Fillmore is the co-founder of the Unity Movement. The life principle is an aspect of God, as I said before. God is life. So I'd like to share this poem out of respect for the day. It's very brief. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row. They mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. There is a part of us that reflects upon those that give so much so that you and I can enjoy the freedom to be and to think. And it's part of my reflection that a peacekeeping nation does not fight for peace, but rather engages or steps in to assist in ending war. There is a distinction, for me at least, because there is a higher vision for humanity, that people would actually give their life for that purpose. Dylan Thomas wrote a poem in 1933 that echoes this intention. He says, they shall have stars at elbow and foot. Though they go mad, they shall be sane. Though they sink through the sea, they shall rise again. Though lovers be lost, love shall not, and death shall have no dominion. Death shall have no dominion. This is a primary intention and awareness, a felt knowing that is cultivated within us every time we sit in meditation, or whenever we do something for someone else out of a sense of service to someone else, to uplift, to help. Death shall have no dominion. I remember some years ago, a friend of mine, we were talking about crucifixion and resurrection. And so how much a large portion of Christianity or traditional Christianity focuses so much on the crucifixion as a vital aspect of one's faith. But my friend reframed this in a way. He says, that's not the point. The point is that there is no death. That's the point. Regardless of the circumstances, there is no death. And I would invite us here now to open our hearts, open our minds to that reality, that there is no death. There is only, a friend of mine once said, another friend, he said, life is eternal. Incarnations are not. So we have these momentary times of being encased in the body, and it has so many opportunities for us to learn and to grow and to use our will, the personal will to choose and that is one of the most important aspects of living a life, is the freedom of will to choose. To choose. I'm reminded of a scripture. Choose this day whom you will serve. As for me, I will choose the Lord. The Lord, you can say whatever the Lord is for you. For me, it's that indwelling being, that enduring being, the Lord of my being, the higher self, the soul. I choose that. I remind myself every day, probably 100 times a day, Bruce, what are you thinking about? Where's your mind? Who are you giving your attention to? What are you giving your attention to? So I would like to share something from a book that I have been using in my class, Journey of Souls. Groundbreaking book. One of the most important books I've read, I think, ever. Because it talks about case studies of people under deep hypnosis that talk about life in between lives, in between incarnations. Dr. Michael Newton was the groundbreaking person that came across this whole technology of deep access into the inner soul. He came across it way back, it started in 1968. And why give attention to life in between lives? Why not just be here now? It's because when we give our attention to the inner life, the outer life is reframed and made more precious, more sacred. So there is a divine remembrance that is so important with this recollection. On the very last page, Dr. Michael Newton states, "We are divine but imperfect beings who exist in two worlds, material and spiritual. It is our destiny to shuttle back and forth between these universes through space and time while we learn to master ourselves and acquire knowledge. We must trust in this process with patience and determination. Our essence is not fully knowable in most physical hosts, but self is never lost because we are always remain connected to both worlds. Perhaps the most gratifying feature of my work in uncovering the existence of a spirit in the minds of my subjects is the effect this conscious knowledge has on them. The most significant benefit which comes from knowing we have a home of everlasting love waiting for us is being receptive to the higher spiritual power within our minds. The awareness that we do belong somewhere is reassuring and offers us peace, not merely as a haven from conflict, but to unify ourselves with a universal mind. One day we are all going to finish this long journey, all of us, and reach an ultimate state of enlightenment where everything else is possible." So Remembrance Day is about honoring those that have given their lives, of honoring the fallen for peace, the warriors of peace. But it's also about us remembering our divine origins. And through that remembrance, through that knowing that we walk the earth ever connected to the spiritual realm, that brings us great peace, great strength to do that which is ours to do in our assignment on the earth. This is the most enduring message that I feel for my whole life experience, and perhaps for you too, to practice divine remembrance. That is the most important aspect of Remembrance Day. Thank you.